more slaves today alive today
Yeah.
than at any other time
Yeah.
in history.
6 million in Africa
Yeah.
at the moment. Another interesting thing in the Joey Barton interview that Rafe, and I do recommend if you can, I don't know if you could put a link on your one of these things. This constant attack of white people in the UK, reparations, all this sort of stuff. At any one point, there were no more than 3,000 slave owners in the UK. Most English people, white people, and I include my great, we're talking 6, 7 generations back now, grandparents, were basically living a form of serfdom in the UK. There was a very small minority that owned slaves. Yet there is now talk about this generation of white people, mostly who descended from effectively slaves themselves in the UK, having to pay reparations to black people.
Yeah, so first of all, let's explore this myth straight away. If reparations are owed, and there's a case for that, if reparations are owed, then it's black people in Africa who need to pay the money. Because they're the ones who caught their neighbours and families, they're the ones who sold them into slave markets, and they're the ones who then sold them onto white slave ships.
Yeah.
If reparations are owed, it's black Africans who need to pay. And if we're looking
because interestingly, all the slave ships which were staffed by Europeans, only ever went to the coast.
Yes.
And the slaves were brought to them.
Slave markets on the coast.
Yeah.
Run by black kings and emperors. And
yes. Yeah.
So that's the first thing. If reparations are owed, then the British are also in line for reparations, because we spent a fortune ending the international slave trade.
Yeah.
And we used the Royal Navy to patrol the high seas. Thousands of British sailors lost their lives, usually through disease, because it was the tropics. We captured hundreds of slave ships, released those people into freedom, and it cost us a fortune. It cost us that much money to end, because again, with the British Empire, we bought the freedom of every slave in the British Empire. And people say, well, we never should have done that, we should have freed them. Well, no, because the law said they were property. And what we do in this country is we follow the law. Those slave owners wouldn't have released those people unless we compensated them for a loss of an asset. So we paid for that freedom. We had to take a loan out. That loan was finally paid 20 years ago or something. I can't remember the exact date now, but about 20 years ago, we finally paid off the loan to free the hundreds of thousands of slaves in the British Empire and made them free people.
But the more fundamental point for me, Nick, is that most of the white people in this country their antecedents never had the benefit of slaves. No. My antecedents on my mother's side were silk dyers. They lived in small houses, lots of them in there. They used to drink at the Silk Dyers pub in Leeds, basically. They didn't have slaves. No. Their ancestors didn't have slaves either. So most white people, my mother included, me, my half-white part, never had the benefit of slavery. Why do I have to pay reparations for slavery?
Yep. Well,
and Anna's parents were hinge makers.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you have people living very, very poor lives, not making much money, living, probably working for somebody who, maybe one very rich person doing it. Why does this generation who never benefited at all, have to pay reparations?
Well, again, they shouldn't. I've told you who should pay reparations, but then dig a bit deeper. So at the height of the transatlantic slave trade and the height of slavery in America, an African slave in Mississippi lived 9 years longer than a man working in the north of England.
Yes.
He lived 9 years longer. Why? Because his life was easier.
Yeah. More importantly than that, and this is something that Rafe mentions in this video, currently in the West Indies, West Indian Africans live 15 years longer than Africans from Benin, where most of the slaves came from. So even today, black people in the UK, black people in the West Indies have a better quality of life than the black people in Africa.
Yeah. So in a perverse sort of way, you
Which is
could
why,
argue-
which is why not many black people go back to Africa.
None of them do. and some who have tried hate it and come
Hate
back
it.
because they think they're going to be welcome. They're open up. Brother, we find you, Kunte Kinte. We find. They get robbed. They're treated as foreigners. They don't know the culture.
Correct.
But a couple of things on slavery. So what most people don't know is at the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, we also had a European slave trade with the pirates from North Africa, the Barbary pirates.
Yes.
Were raiding parts of Europe, but also the UK. They reckon up to 1.25 million white Christian Europeans were taken into slavery over those years.
Oh, really?
And sold on the North African slave markets and sold into the Ottoman Empire. It was because of that slave trade was why one of the reasons why we developed the Royal Navy the way we did, because we had to patrol our coasts. You know the song Rule Britannia?
Yeah.
Rule Britannia will never be slaves. That was sung because
really?
of the white slave trade, because we were saying we're not going to be slaves.
We're not going to get involved in that. And where were these Barbary pirates based in? Where did they come
Round
from?
about Tunisia.
Right, okay.
North Africa.
Yeah.
And what people don't know is Lundy Island, which is an island near Bristol or near Wales in the coast bit, was completely taken over by Barbary pirates, and that's where they took the slaves when they took them before they got shipped to North Africa. And Oliver Cromwell had a dictate to the Royal Navy that any pirate ship you find, you drowned all of them.
Really?
He specified you drowned all of them.
Wow.
That's how bad it was in the UK. There was times where we had no fish in some of these seaside resorts because fishermen would not go out to fish because they were scared of being caught, but when they were out fishing was when the pirates would come and raid their village and take away all their wives and children.
Really?
Hundreds were taken.
This is on the southern coast of England.
Yep.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Devon, Cornwall, round there, and we had
I
to.
didn't know that.
Yeah, well, most people don't know our history.
I want reparations for that.
Yeah, exactly. And we had to send some famous lord to the Barbary pirates, and he spent a decade haggling with them and buying British people back off them one at a time. And more money we raised in the UK, he'd go back and buy more of the British people.
I want some money back.
So that's how. So slavery's happened to every person in every country and every continent throughout the history of the whole of mankind until the British said no more, and then we stopped the vast majority of it.
Was that William Wilberforce? Was that something else? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get that and I fully understand it, but the bit that staggered me was there were only over 3,000 slave owners. So what I'm saying is reparations is a nonsense to me because most white people in this country have never benefited at any point.
Not at all. And in America, there was a couple of thousand black slave owners in America running plantations.
Who were freed men and then started getting...
And they had tens of thousands of slaves.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers. I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.